Hello, everybody. Welcome to the American Dream. Today we have Darrell Murkison with us. Darrell is a community leader. He's been involved in Lynn for all his life. He worked for the Lynn Fire Department for about 30 years, former president of the NAACP and former president of the Community Brotherhood Union. So tell me what's going on in your life. How's retirement, by the way?
Retirement's great, Jim. You know, it's a little bit of a transition, but for me, it's been good because it allows me just to move at my own pace. So that's good for me.
That's a good thing.
I make my own schedules now.
Good. So what's going on in Lynn? What do you see as the central issues going on right now?
Well, I think the central issue right now currently is that we have a mayoral race that's coming up in the city of Lynn. I think that the city is really concerned about that. You know, there's a possibility of new leadership here. You know, we've had 2 terms of Mayor Kennedy, and you know, people have different opinions on that. So, you know, you have Senator McGee who's challenging, and it's going to be pretty interesting in the city. I think so. Yeah.
I try to stay away from campaigns. I've had both of them on the show, but we didn't talk about their campaign. So I try to stay away from that, just out of fairness to everybody.
Oh, I understand it. I understand it. I just figure that's one of the main things that
it is. Obviously, it's on everybody's mind. So, you know, maybe we can do something more down the road, but what else is going on? You're involved in ECCO.
I am.
Yeah. What's going on with ECCO? I went to their party last week at Reverend Jane Gould's house. Nice time. A lot of people. They have a lot of supporters.
Right. I'd say with ECCO, one of our main focuses right now is that we're looking for, as a group, just Adjustment Reinvestment Act, where there's a lot of inequities in the criminal justice system. So ECCO's pushing for quarry reform. They're looking for bail reform. They're looking for just equality in sentencing, and try to eliminate some of the mass incarceration of black and brown people here in Massachusetts. So those are some of the main issues that we're pushing for right now.
All right, let's talk about them. Tell me about bail reform. I had a couple of judges on a few weeks ago, and we talked about bail. It seems to me, in the Massachusetts district court system, and probably the Superior Court system, it's administered for the most part fairly. I mean, the purpose of bail is to make sure somebody comes back to court. They get arraigned, they get arrested, they get arraigned to go before a judge, and the DA may or may not request bail.
Right.
And the judge makes the decision about whether to impose bail or not. And the judge makes that decision based on a bunch of factors, including where the person lives. Does he have ties to the community? Does he have a police record? If he does have a police record, does he have a record of showing up to court when he's supposed to? So I know the judges in Lynn, and they're extremely fair. I don't see that as an issue in Lynn. Do you? I mean, have you?
Well, I think maybe in that regard that you outlined it in, I think ECCO's focus is more on the fact that if a person's not able to make bail, if they're not able to make bail, then they're held even pre-trial.
Right.
And right now, according to some of the statistics that we have, over 40% of the people that are held in Essex County correctional facilities right now are held pre-trial just because they can't make bail. So they haven't been convicted of anything. They haven't even had the trial yet. Right. But because of the bail they can't post, they're being held in prisons right now, about 47%. And I think that's more of what we're speaking of.
That's a serious issue.
Yeah, a lot of, almost 50% of people.
I'm going to have the judges on again in the fall.
They're pre-trial.
Because they don't see color or even poverty when they set bail. They see the other factors, you know, about where a person lives and does he have a job, or does she have a job, and that kind of thing. But I'm glad you raised that, and I'm going to raise it with them again.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what were the other factors you were talking about?
We're also talking about some things like mandatory minimums that are imposed upon sentencing.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, a lot of people feel as though these mandatory minimums are being placed upon people as a bargaining tool, where they're forcing people to plead out before they even go to trial, because they're saying, if you're, again, I'll just make this up hypothetically, because I don't know exactly what the sentencing guidelines are. Just say if someone has a drug possession, and they're I would just say the DA's office or whatever would come to that person and say, listen, you're facing a mandatory minimum of 10 years unless you plead out to this case. If you take this to trial.
They plead to a lesser
yes.
offense, is that it?
So a number of people feel as though they're being intimidated into taking these plea deals because they're threatened with a mandatory minimum of 10 years, possibly 20 years in federal time. So I think there could be some readjustment to that with those mandatory minimums.
I think a lot of those sentencing minimums came out of the 1980s, when politicians around the country would run for office, and they would say, elect me, I'm going to be tough on crime, tough on welfare, and no new taxes. I mean, they were all saying it, except for the thoughtful people. And they would get elected, and they imposed all these laws, and they found, they're finding that it doesn't work. I mean, they're filling up the jails
Right.
At a huge cost to society, to the people in the jails. So I know California had three convictions, 3 felony convictions, I think, and you spend the rest of your life in jail. And that's not working. And so around the country, even in some very conservative states, they're changing these laws. So I hope you get change with your efforts too.
Yeah, I'm trying
ECCO.
to do that. I'd say also, what was the other one? I'm drawing a blank on what it is right now, but just to piggyback on that for a second.
Sure.
The 3 strikes you're out rule, that they would, people get 3 felony convictions and they're going to jail for
in the third
extended period of time. I think that some of the pushback that we get is that, again, like you said, back in the 80s, a lot of politicians were running and on that they're going to be tough on crime, that we don't want all this chaos in the streets. And I think most people would tend to agree with that. That we don't want anarchy and chaos and crime and all these different things. Nobody really wants that. What we really want is just the law to be applied equally and fairly, and if people are convicted of a crime, when they have done their time and they're out, there should be some more programs for them to be instituted into society, reintegrated.
It only makes sense.
Yeah, because it increases that recidivism.
Right.
They're going to go back, it becomes a revolving door. They're going to go back. So what are you doing to try to prevent that or even lessen that? So it's not an easy call, but it's still something that needs to be addressed.
It should be addressed. And you're right, it's not an easy political call, because some people think you're wasting money on criminals when we should be spending it on education or saving taxes,
Right.
So we need thoughtful leaders who recognize that it's a great benefit to society if you can turn convicted felons into productive citizens, where they get jobs and don't have to go back to jail, because it's very expensive to support somebody in jail. Better off sending them to college. So.
Okay. Let me just add one more thing there, Jim. Again, some of the other things that we're pushing for is a threshold for felony convictions between a felony and a misdemeanor. Right now in the state of Massachusetts, I believe it's the threshold is like $250 for theft between felony and misdemeanor. And with this low level for a misdemeanor conviction, you might get someone who's 15, 16, 17 years old, not have a felony on their record. Whereas there's like 30 other states in the country that have a higher threshold for that, and it's like their threshold starts at $1,000 to $200 to $2,500 before it's a felony.
That also makes sense, yeah.
And we're in Massachusetts, it's $250.
But at 16, you wouldn't get charged with a felony. I mean, you get charged with anything you want, but it doesn't go with you into your adult life.
It does, but that leads me to something else. It doesn't go with you into your adult life, but some of these things could be expunged.
It doesn't go on your record,
Your
is in
adult
other words
record,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
but you have a Corey. And a lot of these Corey checks that people do after people are out of jail prevents them from getting employment, from getting housing, all these different
I'm well
things.
aware of it, yeah. Just to go back to the juvenile thing, they changed the juvenile age too. They've moved it up to age 17, so age 17 and below, it doesn't go on your record as a felony. If you do a Corey check on a person, you're not going to find that they had a felony when they were 16. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And that's a good thing. Kids make mistakes, and
they do, but that's one of the main things that people bring to us. So we're, everyone's not aware of the changes they've made in terms of the law and things like that. So those are the questions that are posed to us.
Sure.
So again, we want to address that to try to make sure that threshold for felony and misdemeanor conviction.
Is there legislation to change that?
There is.
Yeah.
There is.
This year?
Yeah.
Okay. Who sponsored it? Do you know?
I can't say that for certain.
Okay. I mean, if you just look at the cost of living over the last 30, 40 years, it makes all the sense in the world. I think that $250 threshold has been there for a long time.
Right.
And costs have certainly gone up. So the cost for crooks should...
It should. It just makes sense. Inflation affects everybody.
Yeah.
Again, just to use an example that we try to use sometimes, say for a young person right now, again, I think things are, the inflation is crazy. If they're buying some of these high-end sneakers or basketball shoes, where they cost $250, $100, more than $100, like, $250 for sneakers. I'd never pay that much for a pair of sneakers, but, these young people, of course, peer pressure and things like that, they try to get them.
It's a big deal.
And who's going to junior high school and high school really can afford that, really?
Yeah.
Most of them don't have a job that can afford something like that.
Right.
So they resort to other means, which is not the best thing to do.
It's not an excuse, but
no, it's not. It's not, but it's a reality
But
that we
they
deal
shouldn't
with.
be charged with a felony. They shouldn't be convicted of a felony for that. I agree with you.
Exactly. There's no appropriate punishment for certain things, and we just think that may be a little bit excessive.
So, do you ever get into the school system and talk to kids about this stuff?
I haven't gotten into the school system to speak about that particularly. I have not. My main focus of when I go into the school system, I'm addressed in African American history.
Yeah.
I do that each year during Black History Month.
Good, good. As a bar association, we go into the school system on Law Day, May 1st, every year. And we try to get a lawyer or a judge to speak at every single school. And it's been a hugely successful program. Kathy Latham welcomes us into the system, and some years we've had 28 lawyers or judges in 28 schools. And this year, Judge Kathleen Campbell spoke at the Lincoln Thompson School, and she did a very good job. I mean, I saw letters extolling her virtues, but she got a bunch of thank you notes from the kids. And they were just, I meant to bring them today just to read a couple of them. They were beautiful, and some of them are quite funny. But they got inspired by her, not to bully and other things. So we're going to do a program on that. But I find, because I'm a lay person, but I find that getting into the schools is a great opportunity for the speakers and for the kids. I mean, it's great to see the kids and see those minds going.
Right.
And they love talking to people from outside the system. They learn about law, firefighters, policemen, they get a good education. For a while, we were doing a program at Marshall Middle School, and we might do that again, a speakers program.
Okay.
I mean, I recommend them, and it's free. You know, you don't have to pay anybody a speaker's fee. You know, but you know, when you talk about Black history, I'll bet you open up some hearts and minds. You know, the things that they never thought about. The students. Yeah.
Oh, I definitely have. You know, it's not only just the students, but some of the faculty as well.
Right.
Because you know, a lot of the facts about African American history, they're not readily taught in a regular curriculum that you have there. So again, the students only know what they've been taught,
Right.
and as well as the faculty, they have a certain upbringing themselves.
So what grade level do you teach when you go in there in February?
High school.
High school.
Yes.
All 3 high schools?
It's just been classical the past couple of years, but Lynn Tech and Lynn English a couple of years before.
Good.
I didn't have an opportunity to do them last year.
Yeah. That's great. Great program. So what about the NAACP? What's the status of the NAACP right now in Lynn?
Right now, the NAACP in Lynn is dormant.
Yeah.
And that's basically just due to, for lack of better words, I just call it just some mandates by our national NAACP that they mandate you have at least 150 members before you are an active branch. Before you act, the chapter is still here in the city of Lynn. We have a charter, we have a chapter that's here, but you can't do anything in the name of the NAACP until you meet that minimum standard of 150 members that are active.
And the Lynn chapter is not able to meet that standard, is that fair?
Well, I wouldn't say they're not able to, because we have been for over 65, 70 years now, been able to meet that threshold, but people become a little bit complacent, apathetic, and that's where we are right now.
Well, that's happening at the national level, too.
It has happened at the national level. I think that it's an attitude that's been a little bit pervasive, I'd say, throughout the country, because again, I think just with the changing of times where people have become comfortable, and I think complacent is a good word, where, you know, we've gone through the civil rights movement, and you don't have the overt racism that you used to have. And people are able to go to school alongside each other. They're not restricted to going to restaurants and things like that that are being, you know, that are overt. But again, I would say even it goes back to the mistreatment in the criminal justice system with law enforcement, things of that I think that had decreased to a certain degree overtly over the past number of years, but that's risen its ugly head again. And I think that I feel very strongly that across the country, again, a lot of people of color are going to come back to groups like the NAACP because there's a need for it.
Oh, yeah. What about?
You know, just recently, let me just say this. There was a case in Minnesota that took place, actually, it's been like, I think maybe 2 years now. A man by the name of Fernando Castillo, I believe, was stopped by a police officer for a traffic stop, a broken taillight. And I think the ruling just came down today that this officer was found not guilty of manslaughter. When he stopped him, and the officer informed him the reason why he was stopped for this traffic violation. And he asked him for his license and registration, and he said, okay, I do have it, officer, but I want to tell you right now that I'm a licensed carrier of a firearm, and I do have a firearm in my glove compartment. And that officer responded, okay, that's fine, just don't reach for the gun or the firearm. And he says, okay. And he went to get his license and registration, his wallet, and the officer shot him 7 times, killing him, with his girlfriend in the front seat and a 4-year-old girl in the back seat. And he was just acquitted for manslaughter, I think it was yesterday. So again, I can cite a number of different things that have happened over the past 2-3 years. There's been a case settled with Michael Brown, that was in Ferguson, Missouri.
Right.
There was a cash settlement for, I guess, for the family just came down a couple of days ago as well. But there's a number of cases like that that have happened over the past, I'd say, 2 years that really spurred the Black Lives Matter movement. That's, I'd say, awakened the consciousness of a lot of black and white people that see these things. Finally, these are some of the things that black people have been complaining about for many, many years. The mistreatment by law enforcement across the country, and it's fallen on deaf ears for, since before the Civil Rights Movement, for years and years. This has happened, but now with the advent of social media and technology, cameras, body cams for law enforcement, you're seeing these things almost in real time. You can see they're showing exactly what happened. A case where, again, another traffic stop, a woman by the name of Sandra Bland in Texas. She was stopped for, I think, failing to signal. And she was pulled over by law enforcement. Again, he informed her he failed to signal. She says, okay, he ordered her to get out of her vehicle. She did not want to get out of the vehicle. Again, it's very scary for black people to even move and being stopped by police officers.
Right.
She didn't want to get out of the vehicle. He instructed her to get out of that vehicle or threatened her, or he would tase her. So she got out of the vehicle. Once she got out of the vehicle, he put her in handcuffs, he arrested her, took her back to the station. She didn't make bail. She was in there overnight, and they found her hanged in her cell the next day. And there was some dispute whether it was suicide or whether it was some other means that happened there, but it was never really determined, but they determined it was a suicide. But that's just one of many cases that happened. Another case, a guy was just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, in a Walmart store, into the sporting goods section of that particular store, picked up a rifle, was looking to buy it, just looking at the gun. Somebody called in saying, there's a black man in this store with a gun. Police came to the Walmart, shot him dead in Walmart.
So,
a lot's happened.
yeah.
So there's a need for the NAACP. So I think that there's some apathy and complacency here, but it's coming back.
I'll get back to this, what we just talked about, because it's very important. But voter suppression also. I mean, the laws that get passed around the country, North Carolina and most states, actually, they're requiring voter ID. I mean, what's the problem? 10 lawyers, Republican lawyers, did a study over a 10-year period of voter fraud. They were going to show, see how much voter fraud there is? And we need to change the laws. Do you know how many cases of fraud they found? 11. In the whole country, 11 cases of fraud. So why is everybody reacting to this charge of fraud, voter fraud? Because they want to suppress black votes.
Absolutely.
I mean, I worked in Mississippi, when we were trying to train people to run for office, and we ran into this down there, and that was a long time ago, back in the early 70s. So, but how do you get people to see it and understand it, and then join the NAACP? I mean,
I think, from my view, I think, again, some of the things I outlined earlier have really kind of lit a fire underneath people to say.
Yeah.
So that's going to energize them to do that. But again, I think it's more about educating people about their past history and what's happening, and citing certain examples like you just mentioned about the voter suppression. These things aren't over.
Right.
They happened back in the 50s and 60s where they had poll tax, they had literacy tests, all these different things were presented for people to suppress the vote, and people registering to vote.
Right.
Threatened by their employers, if you register to vote, you're going to lose your job, all these different things. But these things are starting to reemerge. So I think people see that even with the progress that we've made in the civil rights era, there's still a lot of work to do. And
stay vigilant.
It still exists. It still exists.
We did a show a couple of years ago, you and I and former police chief, now Sheriff Kevin Coppinger, and we talked about Black Lives Matter, And I thought it was a great show. I thought Kevin Coppinger did a great job with his own sense of what needs to be done. I mean, he saw the issues, and he's a big believer in training, and that gets rid of a lot of the problems if you have good training. And so.
I agree. I thought we did a great job that show as well.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I always admired by, I guess, Sheriff Carpenter now, I was going to say Chief Carpenter,
Yeah,
but
right,
Sheriff Carpenter now is that he tried to stay ahead of things a little bit,
Yeah.
where, again, he understood that training was always going to be good.
He did, and he did it. He understood it, and he did it. You know, that's a big deal.
And he had an open mind to it. He was
Yeah,
willing to meet with people and ask them what their issues were and see how they could best
Right.
be addressed. So a lot of people are not open to that.
Right.
So I think what gave him an up and with the communities that we serve here is that he was willing to bring people in and listen to them.
So a lot of people think this is a joke, right? You know, what do you mean Black Lives Matter, or what do you mean they're getting arrested by the police? I agree. So isn't it so that black parents tell their children as soon as they reach a certain age, this is what you have to do if you get stopped by the police? Yes, sir, no, sir. Just give them a training course before they leave the house.
Absolutely. That's part of growing up black. Because the parents know
Right.
what their young kids going to be faced with when they go out there. You know that we know that we have laws that are on the books and everything should be equal and should be treated equally. But it's not the same for a young black man or woman.
Right.
And I'm going to, again, reemphasize black man or woman, because you would think that a female may be treated a little bit differently, but they're not.
Right.
They're not. There's many cases of young black women being abused and roughed up by law enforcement.
We're going to have to wind this down. We're out of time, believe it or not.
Okay.
But I'm going to have you back in the fall, and we'll talk some more about this, okay? And maybe we'll include somebody else. Okay?
Absolutely. Maybe we can
Yeah.
bring Chief McGarry on and talk about that.
I'd love to.
Like I said, it's always good to have
Yeah.
some interaction with the public you're dealing
Yes.
with.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I appreciate it, Jim. Thank you for
Okay, you
everything.
did a good job, and not enough time. But thank you very much
Never
for coming
enough
on
time.
the show.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Okay, yeah. Goodbye, everybody. Yeah.